Welcome to another episode of Altitude Advantage. I'm your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. Across the table, we have our lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla. We have the two-shot there. For those watching on YouTube, they can see Aric. Now it's back to me. If you guys are listening, we appreciate you guys tuning in to another episode because we're going to get you ready for this matchup on Monday Night Football. I want to do it like John Sutcliffe, but I can't really pull it off. And they're like, Monday Night Football. If I get to go really high pitch with it, you know?
He is in a class of his own.
He is. He is. I've been trying to mimic him for years, and I can't do it. I just sound like a...
Good.
Is it?
No, not yours.
Oh.
His. His is really good.
Wow.
His
You know,
really
well, you know what else is going to be good?
I'm not going to lie to you.
You know what else is going to be good? This preview episode, because we're going to talk about just the home success that the Broncos have had at Empower Field at Mile High, break down how the offense is looking, what we can expect from Cincinnati's offense, and much more. But as always on these Thursdays episodes, we start with the comments because that's what people really want to hear.
That's right. So I'm reading some comments from last Thursday's podcast. So that's where if you want to leave a question, a comment, we'll read it here on the air. Or if you say something nice about me, I'll read it too.
on any of the videos.
That's true. Literally any video. I'll find it and I'll read it. Malachi says, you guys have good vibes, love my Broncos, and you guys have great knowledge and content and put a smile on my face. Keep up the good work. Much appreciated.
Aww.
Thank you. Glauber said, love this segment. Thank you. I wonder which segment.
I know, I was like, what segment are they talking about? We have segments?
Bulwark Tier says, love what you guys do. Always excited to watch Altitude Advantage. Do you feel the beginning of this season is following a similar path to last season? Bulwark wrote this before the Chargers game. I think that in general, if you look at Sean Payton's record, I believe he's 30-30 in September games, and then is really dominant in October, one of the best winning percentages in NFL history. He was asked why that was on Thursday, and he kind of said, I've seen those stats, don't quite know, but let's pretend that Monday Night Football, which is on September 29th, let's pretend that's early October so that we can count it as an October game, pretend it's an October game, get that win. I do think in general, one thing you've seen the last 2 years and pretty often in Sean Payton's time in New Orleans is that his teams improve better than most and continue to take strides in what you see week one. And I think I've mentioned this a few times, but the Patriots come to mind as another team that were like this under Bill Belichick. They get better as the year goes on. And so I think if you're a Broncos fan, this is not the finished product. Sean Payton said they're still looking for an identity offensively. We'll get to that and what that might be. But I don't think that that's kind of a problem necessarily, because if you're a team that starts as good week one, but then you never grow, that's a problem by the end of the year. And so we'll see how it goes. But to answer your question about does it feel like last year, I think it's just a little – I think it's different even though the record is the same in that last year the first two games was like Bo trying to figure out how to play in the NFL and like what the speed of the game was like and get everybody adjusted. I actually feel like these first 3 weeks against the Colts and Chargers, and there's a stat that 68 teams since 2000 have not trailed at all in the fourth quarter over their first 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. The Broncos are the only team of those 68 to not have a winning record during that 3-game stretch.
Yeah.
And 64 of those teams are 3-0. And so you might look at that and say, okay, that means like that's historically unlucky.
Yeah.
I look at that and think, okay, that means that the Broncos have put themselves in a good position because you don't – listen, only 68 teams have done that in 25 years. You've got to be a good team to not have trailed at all in the fourth quarter because a lot of these games in the NFL are back and forth. They're one-possession games. You've got to be a good team to put yourself in that position. And so when you maybe there's a little randomness at the end of games, or obviously the penalty against the Colts that gives them a second try at a field goal. Like some of that I think balances out, but I think you'd rather have that than be a not good team that has happened to luck into a couple wins, because I think over the course of a season that balances out. And so this to me feels like a good team that's figuring out how to close games, but is certainly in the conversation and has just gone toe-to-toe on the road with two division leaders. So I know it looks the same from a record perspective, but I feel like this team is further along than last year's team.
I agree with that.
Kind of my opinion. Okay. What else we got from a comment section? Dominique Jaramillo, our friend, says, Aric, bro, I'm just playing with you. I've listened to you since when you and Phil had a show. It's been a while. Dominic, I don't even remember what you said, man, but I'm sure I gave you grief about it. He called me Erica again. That's it. I get it. That's rude. That's rude. Okay, that's enough from that episode. Let's just take a peek over at the Monday show. I think actually some people had some good perspective. A Chargers fan commented, said, Chargers fan here, much respect to the Broncos. Vicious defense. Your pass rush is crazy. This game could have gone either way. I think one thing people are crazy is saying Nix isn't good. He is good. If you guys kept the drive alive, we could have lost. This, to me, was a typical Broncos-Chargers game. Good luck this year. Somebody replied and said, shut up.
That's rude.
That's rivalry, though.
That is rivalry. Like, but, I feel like as Chargers fans, they also had to deal a lot of that talk with Justin Herbert when he first started in the league. People saying, like, he's not good. And it's like, Justin Herbert's really good. So I think if anyone's getting perspective on that, it could be a Chargers fan.
Like a Chargers fan comes and says something nice, and a Broncos fan's just like, shut up.
What are you doing here? Doesn't even go here.
Exactly. Just a lot of feelings. Jose Juarez, 3532. This is a really long comment, so I'm going to start reading it, but we'll see how far I get.
All right.
I think fans need to have some perspective and patience with this team. The Broncos are dealing with the growing pains of having a younger team and trying to figure it all out.
Young and hungry.
In the best case scenario, this team figures it all out after one season, and the team looks to contend with the best teams. In a more likely scenario, this team has growing pains that every team has when they have a lot of young, talented players that are trying to find synergy with each other. Bo Nix is in his second year in the NFL and is trying to learn from a coach that has one of the most complex systems. Bo mentioned that on on Thursday, basically, like, I've played 20 NFL games, I'm going to get better. And it wasn't like, it wasn't as direct as I just put it, but the sentiment was like, and he didn't address any of the criticism, but
of course not.
I think you could kind of tell that it's like,
if there's anything that Bo has, is perspective. He has a very good understanding of the situation that he's in, how he's gonna go. Like, he's fine. It's just funny when he simplifies things. It just reminds me when they asked him about the interception last year, and he was just like, yeah, I stepped back and I threw it to the other team. Like, it's really that simple sometimes. Like, hey, it is what it is. And
then the last comment I'm gonna read is from Braden Plays All Day. Some sort of child in the profile picture. It's a yawning emoji, which I assume means that we put Braden to sleep. But
you're welcome.
But if Braden plays all day, maybe he's just tired from playing all day, and our podcast is just helping him out.
Or our voices are just so soothing.
Go to sleep, Braden.
Go to sleep. That sounded creepy.
Yeah, that was weird. We should cut that out.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. All right, so we appreciate the comments.
Got it. As a producer.
I am the producer, the editor, and the host. I have all power. But you know what else I have power to do is go to another segment of the show. So as we know, we appreciate all the Broncos country for dropping the comments. But as we know, we are returning back to Empower Field at Mile High for this home game against the Cincinnati Bengals. A little different now that Joe Burrow will not be playing in this game. But it's still the bright lights of prime time. And I think for this team, they're aware, they're excited about all that excitement. But I'm more excited just about their mentality going into this matchup. A big part of it is just knowing how important it is to protect home field, knowing the success that they've had playing at home, dating back since last season. But Courtland Sutton said it during his press conference the other day. He mentioned, like, we have an advantage at home, whether it's our fans, the altitude, the environment, just what we're able to put out there. Like, it is important. Every game is important. He's like, but playing at home and protecting home field is very important. And he understands the magnitude of this game, and they all know the bounce back and all those things. But I think returning home and getting a win is going to be key. And history kind of says that they have the ability to do that.
Yeah, I think that one thing about playing at home, particularly for this team, is that because the defense, at least 2 out of 3 weeks so far, has been kind of the strength of the team, and last year was one of the best defenses in the NFL.
Yeah.
When you're at home, obviously you have that great defense, and now you add the noise element to that. And so an opposing offense has to deal with not just Nick Bonito coming off the line of scrimmage, or Zach Allen or Pat Surtain lurking back there, or Noah Hufanga ready to hit somebody. But you've also got to deal with the fact that like you can't hear anything before the play or when you're in the huddle. And so, if you're a great offense and a not so great, like I think obviously home field advantage helps in any situation, but I think the fact that the Broncos defense is already so good, and it would be a challenge for any offense, no matter where you play, when you add the noise in, that probably helps explain. And I don't have the cut down here of what they've done on the road, but in the last 6 home games, the Broncos have allowed just shy of 13 points. And part of that's skewed maybe just a tad because of that Chiefs game last year, the 38-0 win.
Right.
But you are still talking about, this dates back, there's a 6-game home winning streak. It dates back to, I believe it started with the Panthers, and it includes teams like the Panthers, the Falcons, the Browns, the Colts, the Chiefs, and then the Titans. I believe that's all 6. And it's kind of been like this quiet home game winning streak. Like 6 games is nothing to scoff at it. But like if you had asked me how many home games in a row have the Broncos won, I would have said like a few, but I don't know that I would have said 6. And then when I started looking yesterday, okay, well, where does that fit in big picture? Broncos haven't had a 6-game home winning streak since 2014/15.
Wow.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
And obviously Sean Payton, one of the things he likes to say is good teams win at home and good teams win on the road. And if you're good, you're going to win in either place, and you're going to win on prime time, and you're going to win at 1 p.m., and you're going to win in snow, and you're going to win in sunshine. Like his thing is like good teams find a way to win. And so part of it is like the Broncos are a better team now than they've probably been since way back then. And so they're going to have more success. But I think there is something about playing at home and having the energy and protecting home field. And certainly we're in a tough stretch right now where the Broncos are playing 4 out of 5 on the road. And so this one feels particularly critical to get.
Yeah.
You can't let a home game get away. And then after the Broncos get back from London, now you've got, I believe, 4 of 5 at home. And so that's a chance to like, hey, can we stack a few wins here in the friendly confines of Empower Field at Mile High? But that in this league, and we talked about it before the year, you've got to find a way to go like 6-2, 7-1, 8-0 at home, and then can you split the road games?
Yeah,
you don't have to win every road game, but if you can go like 6-2 at home and then you split the road games, that's when you talk about a 10-win season, right? Yeah. And so obviously the Broncos have dropped their first 2 road games, and they've had a road losing streak that dates back to, I think their last road win would have been at Vegas. So also had losses to the Chargers and Bengals last year. But while you try to get that sorted out, you've got to take advantage of opportunities at home. And just a few numbers, Broncos during that 6-game winning streak, 32.7 points per game, 12.8 points allowed per game, 267 yards allowed per game, and a sack differential of 17. And they've won those games by an average of 19.8 points, almost 20 points a game that they've won those by. So it hasn't just been
like squeaking by. Yeah, they've been dominant wins.
Right. And really, like the Colts game was close. The Browns game was close for a good portion of that game. But then you had some, whether it was the Falcons, Panthers, Chiefs, you had some runaway wins there that helped. Anytime you can get a win in this league where you're not sweating it out in the fourth quarter, that's a big deal, and that's helpful. And so they've had a few of those recently, and I know that people are going to say, okay, well, those weren't playoff teams, and you can say that's fine, but like we've seen this week teams in the past week that teams have struggled against all sorts of different opponents, and it's never easy to win the NFL. We've heard Cortland Sutton say that the last couple of weeks. No matter who you play, there is no game where it's like you get a week off. And so, the Packers were talking about being
there's no gimme games.
Yeah. Packers were talking about being undefeated, and they went and lost in Cleveland. And people were talking about Cleveland as a team that was really struggling. So I don't want to hear it with the like, wins over the Falcons or whatever. It isn't that the Falcons were 6-6 or whatever when they came into that game. That was that was billed as a really big game in the Broncos. I think 38-6. Like so the home performance has been good. And I know that Bo Nix has obviously been a big topic of conversation this week. He's been really good at home during this stretch.
Yeah, and looking at those numbers, obviously 6-0 completion percentage, 70%, pass yards per game, 252, pass interception ratio 16-7 with a passer rating of 102.6. Again, like I think it cannot be understated the importance of home field, especially here. A lot of the guys, dating back to the preseason game against the Cardinals, like every guy in the locker room was just like, did you hear how loud it was there? Like they gave so much credit to Broncos country of like, it was loud for a preseason game. Like it was crowded, it was loud. Then for the home opener, it was loud. The team, was going back and forth, but the way that this team was really not reliant, but the way they fed off the crowd. I spoke to Talanoa Hufanga after that game, after that win, and he's like, there was some times where I couldn't hear the call. And he's like, because we want them to disrupt their huddle. And I'm trying to hear the call. He was like, but that's fine. I will adjust. Keep doing that. And so it's like, it's a good call to action for this fan base to understand, like, this is a primetime game, but this primetime games for me are like little mini Super Bowls. Just because, like, they're so fun. All eyes on you. It's always a spectacle, whether it's halftime or fireworks or whatever it is. They're just special games. And so I think understanding that and knowing the success that you've had at home, I think you can carry that onto the next phase of getting a win. But there's something about prime time that just adds motivation to all these guys.
Yeah, and Cortland Sutton, I think, said it well when he was like, I was growing up and I thought every team just gets 5 primetime games. And then he was like, I got to the league.
That's actually fair. That's fair.
I mean, it makes sense. Like when you're, like, I'm sure I didn't have a great idea at 10 years old of like, oh, here's how they dole out the primetime games. You're probably just like, oh, this team's on TV.
It's split evenly.
Yeah. It makes sense in some ways. And it used to be that like every team got the Thursday night game at least, so everybody. But Cortland was like, oh, I thought everybody just got 5. And now he's like, and certainly he's lived through this, right? Yeah. Where he knows what it's like to have 1 or 2. He knows what it's like to have 5. And you earn them is what he said.
And you earn a home primetime game too.
Yeah, that's true. And I think anytime the Broncos play in primetime, like I think networks know this is a good environment. This is a fun stadium. The crowd, like they get loud and it's like it's scenic and you show them out. Like it's a good primetime setting.
Yeah. It's a good football city.
It is. It's a great football city. But you earn them. And the Broncos have earned these primetime games. Last year, they had, I believe, 2 going into the season, and yeah, they got flexed into the Thursday night game against the Chargers, and then the Bengals game, which I guess technically wasn't primetime. I think it was like a 4:15, but it was a standalone national TV game.
We'll count it.
We'll count it. But going into the year, you had the Saints game and the Browns Monday Night Football game, and it was like, okay, we got a Thursday night, Monday night, like we got to go out and earn more. And the Broncos make the playoffs, and this year you have 4 primetime games, you have 5 standalone games, you have the potential, like who knows what happens, but if the Broncos and Chargers, I could see that being a big game late in the year.
Given what, given how they've played each other.
Is that a Saturday game? Is that a?
Yeah.
We're a long way away, but. It's also coming faster than you think. Time's flying.
It's creeping up.
Week 4 already. But so you have to earn them, and the Broncos have earned them, and that I think speaks to what this team has done. Now, after you earn them, you got to go take advantage of them.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that for Broncos fans, there are people disappointed this team is 1-2. There are people maybe disappointed you don't get to see Joe Burrow, and that this game doesn't have as much juice maybe as it did, if it was a rematch of that thrilling game last year.
Yeah.
The Broncos need this game, and the Broncos need everybody to show up and be loud. And, they might be 1-2. You got to help them get to 2-2. You got to help, no matter
it's a 500
who's that quarterback, you got to make sure that it's as loud as heck and that Jake Browning can't hear himself think at the line of scrimmage. And you've got to take advantage of those prime time. Because, listen, when the Browns came in here last year, they had 3 wins, I think. Jameis Winston had led that one victory against the Ravens, but otherwise, like, had struggled a little bit. And people were like, "Oh, we're gonna cruise." And then it's like, man, Jameis.
That was one of the most exciting games.
It was fun.
Yeah,
it wouldn't have been fun if they lost, but it was fun.
It was fun because we won.
But Jameis was throwing the ball all over the place, and I remember being like, "This, can they get a stop?" And then Nick Bonito has the touchdown, and it's like, okay, it's done. They're going to run away with it. But no, then, Jerry Jeudy has 3 touchdowns. Like, it was just this.
J-Mac had like an interception that no one really sure was the interception. He ran it back as a pick 6. And then it was just, my favorite line from that entire game was Jameis Winston saying, "Deliver me from pick 6s." Because that was
terrific. That's terrific. He's a good quote.
It's a good quote.
But like, that was one of the most memorable. That may have not been, if you looked at the schedule and said the 3-14 Browns are coming here, might not have been what you guessed was like one of the best games of the year.
Fair.
But it was on primetime. Things happen on Monday night. And so, like, there's always that chance for a little bit of the mile-high magic to come out and big plays to be made. Wearing the blue jerseys.
I was going to say.
The team will announce the full combination later in the week. There's been some hints, but we're not going to spoil anything for sure. But yeah, it's primetime. The Broncos won. They have one home primetime game last year. That's it, right? Just the Monday night.
Yeah, just the Monday night.
They were 1-0. That's my stat.
Undefeated.
I'm trying to think back to 23 under Sean Payton. Minnesota at home was prime time, and the Broncos won.
It always amazes me how you keep this.
Buffalo on Monday night, they won, but that was on the road, obviously. Any other prime Thursday night? Kansas City was on the road. Can't remember any other primetime games.
Yeah, I'm looking at, just quickly glance at the schedule. There's a primetime game here, and then there's an 8:15 against the Steelers. Oh, that's the Bengals. I'm like, we don't play the Steelers. But yeah, it's like, there's a few that I think you can kind of circle on your list. But again, like when I ask the guys, like they all talk about like, yeah, we grew up watching this, like watching these games. And I asked, like, do you still get like, especially the guys that have been in the league for a while, I was like, do you still get nervous? Is this just another game? And they were just like, they're like, I don't get nerves, but you do get the butterflies, like the excitement, we're one of the only 2 teams, like it's a doubleheader on Monday night. It's like we're one of 2 teams that are playing. Like it's a national televised game. Like everyone's watching us. Everyone wants to see what we do. Like this is our chance to show it on a national stage.
I was laughing when guys were like, it's the only game on. And I was like, except for this week when there's a doubleheader at the same time. Watch this game.
Yes, watch this
Jonathan
game.
Cooper said he didn't really watch Monday Night Football. He's more of a college football fan growing up in Ohio.
Jonah Ellis said the same thing, which when I asked him, did he grow up watching Monday Night Football, he was like, yeah, well, he's like, not really. And he's like, and then it kind of like shocked him because he's like, I grew up in a really big football family, so it's kind of interesting that I didn't watch. He's like, we didn't watch a lot of football, like in general. But in my head, I'm like, that kind of makes sense. If your entire outside like fun time or like what you work on is football, like you need to have some kind of separation, some kind of decompression. So, but it was really interesting. Jeremy Crawshaw also spoke about.
Oh, that was funny. He was like, I've never Tuesday morning football, never seen Monday Night Football. Being in Australia, he said he taped it and watched it like the next day. But you would think that Monday Night Football, isn't it just happening at like 9 a.m. Australia time?
I don't know how far ahead Australia is in time.
Sound off in the comments if you know what time
the comments
it is.
Where
Aussies at. When does Monday Night Football start in Australia? You can look it up. Just for people wondering, 2023, they also had primetime games at Detroit and home against the Patriots. Unfortunately, lost both of those games.
Well, you know what? The Broncos and Bengals, this matchup, the Broncos do lead the all-time series. I believe it's like 22-12. And it's interesting that
nailed it.
They've played 3 primetime games before, and the home team has always come out victorious in the 3 primetime matchups that they've had.
What do you think it means?
I think it means that home field advantage is important. And that's why the guys are stressing. Not stressing. They're stressing it. They're stressing the message. Not stressing about the matchup. They'll be misquoting me out there. But you mentioned that this is one that the Broncos need. And coming off of tough losses, Bo Nix spoke about the fact of, we're one play away from flipping the game in the fourth quarter. And it's something that I know is going to happen. They asked him about, just his throwing. He's like, you just got to keep throwing. I have a coach that supports me and encourages me. And I have a locker room that has my back. So I can't be scared to throw the ball. And he's not scared to throw the ball. He's like, I'm going to keep shooting and I'm going to keep, launching down to my receivers and we're going to make a play. And we had to look back the last 2 weeks and see how come we didn't finish these games and how can we finish these games? Because they asked him about that stat that you mentioned earlier about not trailing in the fourth quarter. And he mentioned like, yeah, like I saw that and I know like we're at that point where it's gonna flip. Head coach Sean Payton also talked about that flip. So I think with the bounce back game being at home for Monday night, then obviously we'll look ahead later about the short week, et cetera. But their focus is on this game. And I think bouncing back, they're very confident that they can do it because they know that it was either penalties or just timing and things, but they know they can fix it. And I think they're confident they can do so on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, again, like I said during the comment section of the show, rewind.
That was my rewind.
You're not going to be leading in the fourth quarter, the whole fourth quarter, if you're not doing good things before that, right? And it's also not like the Chargers were just, or the Colts were just making an insane amount of mistakes. Like the only reason you had a fourth quarter lead against the Colts is because you moved the ball well and you got a couple fourth down stops. Like it's not like Daniel Jones was throwing picks left and right.
Right.
And even in the second half against the Chargers, like you score, the Chargers go on this long drive, you hold them to a field goal to keep the lead. Like there were things that were good. And I think, again, if one play here or there, we're having a completely different conversation about, hey, the Broncos just gutted out two, or even if it was just one, like gritty road win.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right that like continue to play that way, put yourself in position, and then you hope you find a way to close. You never want to call, and Sean Payton said this last week, week 3, you never want to call a week 4 game either a must-win game, but this one does feel important because you're at home in the midst of this long road stretch.
Yeah.
It's a team that, you know, and Jake Browning is a very capable starter. We'll get to him. I know he's struggled this year so far, but Sean Payton's mentioned the experience he has in leading that team that still has Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase.
You can't count anybody out. I mean, look how people thought about Daniel Jones and how he's playing. Like, you know, so you never know. We always talk about this. Any given Sunday, anybody can come in and make a play, have a game. And so you always have to approach it as if they're going to play their best.
Yeah. But regardless of the opponent, I just think the idea of you've got a home game and then next week you go to play the defending Super Bowl champions on the road. That's going to be one of probably the toughest games of the year for you. And it doesn't mean you can't win it, but it's going to be a
tough game.
Tough game.
Yeah.
You don't want to head to Philadelphia at 1-3 and be looking at a 2-game hole. And we've seen the Broncos a couple years ago. They were 1-5 and they found a way out of it. And obviously they struggled down the stretch, but when you drop these games, it just increases the need to be perfect later on. And reduces your wiggle room. And certainly if you want to continue to challenge in the division, you've got to stay on the Chargers' heels and hope that they slip up. And whether it's the division or seeding down the road, like this matters. And I think someone said in the locker room, it might have been Adam Troutman, but I'm not positive, so don't attribute it to him necessarily, where he was like, you don't want to call this a must win, but it does feel like one that we need to get. And so I think there'll be this enhanced sense of focus, energy, determination, whatever you want to call it, going into Monday night in hopes of beating the Bengals. And you mentioned the bounce back games.
Yeah.
Kind of an interesting...
Break it down for us.
Kind of an odd stat maybe, but 3 times last year the Broncos lost back-to-back games. Weeks 1 and 2.
Yep.
Then they lost to the Chiefs and Ravens.
Yep.
Actually, Ravens then Chiefs, I believe, right? And
try
then
to block that portion of the season out. Yeah. But yes.
And then the Chargers and Bengals. And each time after those losses, Broncos came back 3-0, outscored opponents 102-13 in those games. They've not lost 3 consecutive games in the same season since weeks 1 through 3 of 2023. That was obviously the first 3 games Sean Payton was here. And in those games, which would have come against the Falcons, Jets on the road, Tampa on the road. Sorry, Tampa, Falcons at home, and then Kansas City in Week 18. The Broncos averaged 34 points per game. They allowed an average of 4.3 points per game, not a typo, 4.3. Plus 684 in yardage, plus 15 in sack differential, and then Bo in those games, really good. 80.6 completion percentage, 281 yards, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 129.8 passer rating. So I think when you add in, and listen, like some of that is
As you asked me, what do you think that means?
Yeah, well, it means all sorts of different things. I think each of those has its own story, right? Like weeks 1 and 2, Bo's figuring it out. Really good win against Tampa, probably maybe the best win of the season. Then I think the second one did show determination. You know, you have a really tough loss to Kansas City. Field goal gets blocked. You come back against a Falcons team that is, I believe, leading the division at that point, and you pound them.
Yeah.
And then the last one, after 2 chances to make the playoffs, you have one final chance. It is against the Chiefs backups, but I think the way that Denver played in that game, like there was no doubt they scored on their first 2 or 3 possessions, and it was just they didn't leave it in doubt. They just put it away quickly.
Yeah.
I think this will be a tougher challenge, but the Broncos, I do think, would be well served to, and you've got to finish, but if you could get off to that hot start and just kind of like put it out of reach, that's kind of what the Vikings did to the Bengals last week. And then it just became a game where the game script gets flipped. It's hard now for the Bengals to stay in what they want to do. You unleash the pass rush, and pretty soon the game turns in your favor. But yeah, last year, really good, and did not lose 3 consecutive games at any point last year with Bo as the quarterback.
Yeah, I think this game is one that I think they're ready for. You talked about that specifically after the Chargers loss, where you said like that loss wasn't as gut wrenching or wasn't as like, I guess I don't know how you phrased it, but you mentioned like it wasn't as like hurtful as the Colts loss was, and you mentioned like you saw a lot of things that were positive, and you know that this team is really focused, and I think that mentality is spreading across the locker room. Like every guy you talk to, they're so locked in, they're so focused. They understand these last 2 games were something that they don't want to relive. And I think playing against the Bengals and going against Jake Browning and the matchups you're going to see, whether it's with Jamar Chase and Pat or Chase Brown, I believe his name is, the running back, and this pass rush and how they're going to be able to stop the run. There's many ways that they can showcase their talent, right? Because regardless of the quarterback position, you mentioned they do have Tee Higgins, they do have Jamar Chase. And I know that they didn't do much last week, but that was because, as you mentioned, the Vikings defense was able to put the pressure on Jake Browning early. And that's exactly what this team wants to do. When I talked to Jonah Ellis, he mentioned, like, we need to win the line of scrimmage, and that's what we pride ourselves in. And once we get back to and add that pressure, I mean, this team leads the NFL in sacks and QB hits for a reason. And we'll get more into the defense in a second because you know I'm a defensive girly. But I do want to talk about this Broncos offense. You just gave out Bo's numbers, the way that he did it, how he has performed in back-to-back losses dating back to last season. But what have you seen the identity of this offense start to become as you have J.K. Dobbins, really kind of being successful over the last 3 weeks? You have Cortland and Bo and Mims and Bo kind of finding those connections. What have you seen from them as they kind of develop offensively?
Yeah, I thought there was some really interesting insight that both Sean Payton and Bo Nix shared on that. Normally you get, like any coach around the league, you get some sort of coach speak of, you don't get anything of substance. But I thought Sean Payton and Bo Nix both gave really insightful answers. Sean Payton saying, hey, we're not there yet in terms of an identity, but we need to be soon. And obviously, I think running the football is something that the Broncos are going to want to do and have be part of their identity. And it is a more explosive element this year than it was last year because of the juice that J.K. Dobbins has. And you hope to see R.J. Harvey continue to kind of work his way in as well. But, like, I saw things in the run game in that first drive of the second half last week against the Chargers that we haven't seen in a while. And that, to me, feels like it can be part of the identity of this offense. And then off that, Sean Payton talked about, hey, here's Bo Nix's ability to make plays off schedule while he's moving out of the pocket. And he said there are certain things, like when he throws the deep ball and it's just off the fingertips, you don't want to coach him too much because part of his game is making those sorts of plays like out of the pocket. And so
trusting his instincts to like hit his target.
Right. And so it to me, it feels like, hey, run the football and then have Bo make these, you want to be able to deliver and hit the easy ones, right? But then in big moments, can you deliver those off-schedule plays that he made in Cincinnati last year on the final play of the game, that he made against the Chiefs in Week 18 where he's taken off and running, like him using his legs feel like it can be part of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, listening to Bo, he said Cortland is part of our identity, throwing the ball to Cortland in big moments. But then he also said, and I thought this was interesting, some of the newer guys or some of the younger guys were still trying to figure out how they fit. And I think that you can practice all offseason, you can play in the preseason until there's live bullets and teams are game planning for you. I think you just don't know for sure how new guys are going to fit in, or younger guys like a Troy
how are going to handle that moment,
a Pat Bryant, or even just like how do you what's the best way to use them, right? Like where do we put Troy Franklin, or what sort of routes? When do we want to go to him? Evan Ingram, like we know what he does well from a skill set, but like how do we work that into a game plan, and how do we make it so that he has an impact, or you take advantage of things? And so Bo said that's still a work in progress. And obviously each week you hope that you get closer to what that identity is so that you're rounding into form later in the year. But also the urgency that Sean Payton talked about of like, we've got to figure this out soon, and thinks that they will figure it out soon. And, again, I do think to some degree it's a week-to-week league. Some weeks you might run the ball a lot. Sometimes you might throw it 40 times. Yeah. But having at least some, hey, in a neutral game, these are the staples of what we want to do. He did agree that the Broncos are still working toward that, and I thought that was kind of refreshing. The Broncos have to be better on early downs. That's one of the things that we've heard people talk about. I saw a ranking that the Broncos were near the bottom of the league in early down efficiency, and so then your third down options become limited if you're in 3rd and 10. If you're in 3rd and 3, you can run the ball, you can throw a short pass, you can run play action and take a deep shot, or like if you're in 2nd and 2, for example, that's when teams take shot plays. And when you're in the 3rd and 10 or 2nd and 10, it just makes it so difficult to stay in any sort of rhythm. And so it'll be interesting to see this week, like, how do the Broncos try to get themselves in more manageable 2nd downs, more manageable 3rd downs, keep drives moving, and then maybe you unleash the kind of shot play in there. But this offense, I think, even if one or two of those, maybe even just one more of those deep shots from Bo connects, or you punch the ball in from the 5-yard line on that drive, and now you're talking about, okay, well, we've scored 24 against this top-ranked defense, or one of the top-ranked defenses in the Chargers, or you're able to get that field goal to go through against Indianapolis. Now you're talking about, okay, well, we just put up 30 on the road. There's still work to be done, and there's still things you've got to correct. But I don't know that there would be the same external hand-wringing about the offense, because it's really that close. And I also think the Chargers game, despite how bad the Broncos were on 3rd down and the struggles they had on early downs, and the fact that a lot of 3-and-outs, right? Like, they still found ways to put up points, and that to me is encouraging to some degree, that like even when you're not at your best, even when you are playing a really good defense, found a way to put up 20 points. And it took being +2 in the turnover margin. It took a kind of a trick play, gadget play, whatever you want to call it, on 4th and 2 at midfield. But still, you did it. And so that to me like suggests that if you can just clean a few things up, the penalties, you've got it. Part of the identity has to be penalty free, or at least really minimize the penalties, because that hurt them as much as anything against the Chargers. So we'll see. I'm sure that's a big point of emphasis this week. We'll see if it translates on Monday night from an offensive perspective. Yeah,
and looking at the run game, which you had mentioned, just going to read what J.K. Dobbins has done over the last few weeks. He leads the Broncos with 41 carries, 222 rush yards, 3 rushing touchdowns in 2025. He's the first player in Denver history with 60-plus rush yards and 1+ rush touchdown each of the first 3 games of the season. And one of the stats I did find interesting, which I don't know how much weight it holds, because I know like things change and whatever, but Dobbins against the Bengals in his career, 73.5 rush yards per game, 8.9 yards per carry, and 4 rushing touchdowns in 4 career games versus the Bengals. Most yards / carry by any running back versus a single opponent in the Super Bowl era with a minimum of 30 carries. The reason why those kind of stats, because some players just play very well against certain teams. And I think when you kind of have that in the back of your mind, whether it's subconsciously, you're kind of like, I tend to have their number. And so I think that's another added kind of mental weapon that not only JK could use, but this offense can take advantage of like, he just tends to do very well against this team. And then when I was talking to Steve on Broncos, when we were getting ready to talk about Broncos HQ, he had mentioned that, like, as a player, like, sometimes you kind of feel like that extra confidence of, like, I know this team. Like, even if it's different players or a different coach, I know this team because every team has a identity, I guess you can say. And so Steve had mentioned, like, it's really fun when you kind of have a career of playing well. And so I thought that stat was really interesting. But just the way that this team has been able to run the ball has been really exciting. I can't wait to see exactly how they find, as you mentioned, the young guys to really fit in, because you do have the Pat Bryants, you do have the RJ Harveys that can really kind of make big plays for this offense. But I think when you're going against this defense, you have to find different ways to attack them, because you have Trey Hendrickson on the other side trying to get after Bo. Yeah,
the Bengals defense has obviously new defensive coordinator. Lou Anarumo goes to the Colts, who the Broncos saw a couple weeks ago. So a lot of the scheme is different. They've struggled last year and this year, 26.3 points per game since the start of 2024, which is 29th in the NFL. They've allowed 36 pass touchdowns since then, third most in the NFL. I think they're dealing with some injuries. This is a defense that has, obviously struggled a week ago, though they were put in a bad position by their offense, just quite frankly. You hope you can find areas to attack in this one. But that said, it's still an NFL game. And I think, to me, this one is more about, and Trey Hendrickson, you're right, like, really good player. We know what he means to the Bengals.
Yeah. But led the league in sacks last year, I think.
Yeah. But this, to me, feels more about the Broncos. Like, can they do what they want to do, not beat themselves with early down penalties, mistakes, things that, like, put you back, turnovers. Like, can the Broncos play their own clean game and find a way to score some points? We'll transition to Denver's defense, but I saw this stat. This might be the stat of the week.
Ooh.
I might tweet it.
Stat of the week, presented by nobody.
But you could, if you wanted to. If you're listening, you could. Okay, Joe Burrow in his first 20 career games, 8-11 and 1 tie. That's his record. Okay, 66.6 completion percentage, 34 touchdowns, 16 picks, 95 quarterback rating, 3 rush touchdowns. Bo Nix in his first 20 career games, 11-9, 66 completion percentage, 34 touchdown, 15 picks, 91.9 quarterback rating, 4 rushing touchdowns. So Bo, within 0.6 completion percentages, Bo has the exact same number of touchdowns, 1 fewer pick. Passer rating, Burrow slightly higher, 95 versus 91.9, but very close. And then Bo, 4 rushing touchdowns to Burrow's 3. Those are eerily similar. And that's not to say that Joe Burrow that Bo Nix is going to become Joe Burrow. But it also says that, do we think people were freaking out about Joe Burrow after 20 games? Do we? Or do we think that maybe, as Bo Nix kind of suggested, there's still some room for growth and ways to keep getting better?
It's like he's in year 2 or something, right?
That stat is, wow.
That's why it's the stat of the week.
It's a good stat.
I mean,
I'm going to tweet that stat.
You should tweet that stat, because perspective. It's all about perspective. It's about taking a step back. And that's why I mentioned earlier in the show, Bo has perspective, because Sean Payton is really good at stepping back and looking at the full picture of what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish, and where they're currently at, And so, yes, I know there's been talk of what the future could look like, but as the guys had mentioned, we're supposed to think that way. We're supposed to think that we can play with the best of the best, because that's what we're striving to do, and that's what we have been doing. We're going to be in games. We're going to have exciting moments. And I think when you look at, as you mentioned, how this defense can play against this offense, what are your expectations from this offense? Obviously, Joe Burrow not playing. He's going to be out for a few more months, I think, like 2 more months.
Yeah, till mid-December, I think, is the idea.
So when you look at this Cincinnati offense, you have Jake Browning, who's thrown a league-high 5 interceptions so far this season. He has 3 interceptions off the bench in week 2, and then he has 2 in his first start, which was against the Vikings. This team, turnovers is a big part of them in terms of the Broncos defense. We saw Brandon Jones get an interception. We saw Jonah Ellis cause a forced fumble. We've seen plays happen. Hufanga was able to cause a fumble in week 1. So you see these moments where this team is aggressive, they're attacking, and they want to make sure that they cause you to make a mistake, whether it's because you can't get the playoff because it's so loud, or they read a play correctly and they knock the ball loose, or they just read you and they get an interception. How do you expect this Broncos to play against the Cincinnati offense?
Yeah, I think turnovers is a big part of it. You mentioned the 2 interceptions last week. They also had 3 fumbles. Like, guys around Jake Browning didn't do much to help him. They had 5 turnovers overall against the Vikings in that 38-point loss, which was the largest in team history. I think when you look at the stats so far this year for Browning, 67.1 passer rating, which is second worst among 31 quarterbacks. He's got, like you said, a league high 5 interceptions. He last week had 140 pass yards, career lows in pass yards per attempt, passer rating in his 8 starts. So you have that kind of baseline from this year.
Yeah.
But I think, and what Sean Payton said on Thursday was that when you've watched this guy in the past, you see a guy that can operate the offense in the same way that Joe Burrow operates the offense, in that he's a pocket passer. He throws the ball down the field. We saw late in the 2023 season that, like, he led him to a couple wins. In 2023, he was 4-3, 12 touchdowns, 7 picks, 98.4 passer rating. So, like, this is a guy that can do it.
Right.
And if you're the Broncos, like, the argument for Jake Browning playing better would be, hey, he's got to start under his belt now. He's, maybe he's a little bit more comfortable. He's shaking off the rust, and he's able to come in and play better this week. If you're the Broncos, you got to try to not let that happen. Again, I think the way you do that is you've got to put pressure on him, which starts in stopping the run, putting him in 2nd and long, 3rd and long. Chase Brown, who last year I thought played well against the Broncos, he struggled to start the year. He's got 47 carries for 93 rush yards, which is just 1.98 yards per carry, which is he's the first guy since 1993 to have 40 carries but fewer than 2 yards per carry in the first 3 games of the season. So he's struggling a little bit. You've got to make sure to keep that going.
Yeah.
And part of that is the Bengals offensive line has dealt with some injuries. Former Bronco Dalton Reisner is over there now. We'll see if he plays or not. It sounds like maybe there's some competition there at the guard spot, but this is an offensive line that's been beaten up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's an offensive line that, when you pay Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins and Trey Hendrickson, and Joe Burrow, you've got to take away elsewhere. And so it's an offensive line that maybe doesn't have as many resources invested. The Broncos have to take advantage of that matchup. To me, that is a big one in this game. Can Denver win the line of scrimmage? DJ Jones, Zach Allen, Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper. JFM was limited yesterday in practice. We haven't seen the practice report for today. We'll see kind of where he is. But, like, can you win the line of scrimmage? Because you can win the line of scrimmage and stop Chase Brown and then put pressure on Jake Browning. I feel like you'll be able to force some turnovers and really push this game in your favor. The one thing is, though, like, they do still have 2 of the best receivers and 2 of the best weapons
Higgins
in the NFL.
Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase with Browning as a starter, 5 catches per game, 61.2 receiving yards per game. That's compared to about 7 catches and 91 receiving yards per game with Burrow as the starter. Higgins' numbers are also a little bit down, 2.7 receptions and 57 yards per game with Browning, 5 receptions and 66.8 yards with Burrow. Now, last year, it was kind of the Tee Higgins game. Yeah. Right? Like, and Riley Moss was the first one to admit in the locker room, like, some days he said you got to eat something, not appropriate for air. Certain type of sandwich, I think he said, right? But he owned up to it. He moved on. I'm sure he's excited for this matchup. Yeah. And last year, this was the game I think that won Pat Surtain Defensive Player of the Year, because it was a nationally televised game. Surtain covered Chase on 36 of his routes, 6 targets, 3 catches for 27 yards, 0.8 yards per route. When Chase wasn't covered by Pat Surtain, and I think this actually helped Pat that Chase had some other success. 6 catches.
It was it
was like this comparison.
Yeah.
Chase, when anyone else covered him, 6 catches on 9 targets, 75 yards, 3.1 yards per route. And so Surtain mirrored him on 43 of his 60 routes. And then also Surtain a couple times covered Tee Higgins. He forced that crucial fumble late in the game that gave the Broncos a chance to go ahead. So we'll see. Surtain, I think, would say that maybe the last couple games have not looked like kind of what we expect from Pat Surtain, even though I don't think by any means it's been bad. Like even week 2 when he was getting asked a million questions, he gave up 60 yards. It wasn't like he was getting torched. But
I remember you talked about that. You were like,
whatever.
Let's put in perspective here.
But like if for whatever reason, he like seems to have played well against Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is going to want to end that narrative. Pat's going to want to keep it going. This will be fun to watch. And if Pat can take away Jamar Chase and take away the guy that Jake Browning's going to want to go to, and even if he makes Browning hold it another split second, like you saw how fast Benito got off the line last week, I think this defense has an opportunity to make some plays. Again, penalties on both sides of the ball. You've got to clean it up because it's tough to.
You can do everything else right, but those penalties can come back to haunt you.
You make a big play, or like, hey, you give up a third down catch to Keenan Allen, but then there's a 15-yard penalty tacked onto it. Yeah. That's tough, and it basically gives them another free first down and a half. So it's a tough thing for this defense. They got to find a way to minimize those. But yeah, I think at home with the crowd on your side, getting loud with this pass rush, you'd like to make it so that Jake Browning doesn't find that comfort zone. And I think the way you do that too is come out hot. Don't let him get that early success. And I know the Broncos have allowed a field goal on each of the opening drives so far this year. Can you find a way to stop that? And not like a field goal is the end of the world, but if you can stop that and it's like, here's a quick 3 and out, like let's set the tone.
Yes.
That's a big deal. Probably puts field position in your favor, helps your offense. So it'll be interesting to watch, but I think Broncos defense hopefully is ready for the challenge.
I'm excited, and I think you bring up a good point of just setting the tone and setting that tone early. So that starts with you, Broncos country, because you got to make sure you guys get there early and get there loud. A reminder that kickoff is set for 6:15 p.m. at Empower Field at Mile High for this Monday night football matchup. It was a classic last year, and hopefully we have another classic with a win this year. Once again, this is another episode of Altitude Advantage. I am your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. Across the table, we have our perspective monitor, our stats guru and lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla. As always, leave your comments, leave your thoughts, and for the latest, check out DenverBroncos.com.